You're nothing but a pathetic little baker. A complete embarrassment to this family." Those were my mother's exact words as she threw my suitcase onto the front porch. "Don't you dare come back until you've made something of yourself. Something real." I stood there in the rain, watching through the window as my brother Daniel laughed at something my father said. They didn't even look outside. They didn't care that I was standing there, soaking wet, with nowhere to go. That was 7 years ago. I was 21 years old, fresh out of culinary school, and I had just made the biggest mistake of my life according to my family. I had turned down a full scholarship to law school to pursue my dream of becoming a pastry chef. My name is Maya, and I'm 28 now. Back then, I was the family disappointment, the one who didn't follow the plan, the one who chose flour and sugar over law books and courtrooms. My brother Daniel, on the other hand, was everything my parents ever wanted. Handsome, ambitious, driven. He had graduated top of his class from law school and was working at one of the most prestigious firms in Atlanta. He was their golden child, and I was just the shadow that followed him around, never quite measuring up. Growing up in our family meant understanding one simple rule. Success was measured in prestige and money. My father was a federal judge. My mother was a corporate attorney. Daniel was destined to follow in their footsteps from the day he was born. And me? I was supposed to be the same. I was supposed to wear suits and argue cases and make them proud at their fancy dinner parties. But I loved baking. I loved the precision of measuring ingredients, the magic of watching dough rise, the joy on people's faces when they tasted something I created. My grandmother had taught me everything she knew before she passed away. She was the only one who understood me, the only one who encouraged my passion instead of dismissing it. I remember the exact moment everything fell apart. I had just received my acceptance letter to Georgetown Law. My parents had pulled strings, called in favors, done everything they could to get me in. They were so proud. They had already planned a celebration dinner. But that same week, I also received an acceptance letter from the Culinary Institute of America, full scholarship based on my pastry portfolio. When I told my parents I wanted to go to culinary school instead, my mother actually laughed. She thought I was joking. When she realized I was serious, her face transformed into something I had never seen before, pure disgust. "You want to be a baker?" She said the word like it was something dirty. "You want to waste your potential making cakes for birthday parties while your brother changes the world?" My father was worse. He didn't yell. He just looked at me with cold disappointment and said, "If you choose that path, you're on your own. We didn't raise you to be mediocre." Daniel sat at the table, smirking. "Let her go, Dad. Some people just aren't cut out for real success. I went to culinary school anyway. I used my grandmother's inheritance to pay for my living expenses since the scholarship covered tuition. For 2 years, my parents barely spoke to me. Phone calls went unanswered. Holiday invitations were lost in the mail. I was slowly being erased from the family. When I graduated at the top of my class, I thought maybe things would change. I called home to share the news, hoping for even a small word of congratulation. My mother answered on the 3rd ring. "Maya, this isn't a good time. Daniel just made junior partner at his firm. We're celebrating. I graduated today," I said quietly. "Top of my class. I won the national pastry competition." There was a pause. Then she said, "That's nice, dear. Maybe now you can get a real job." Something broke inside me that day. I moved back to Atlanta thinking I could prove myself by starting my own bakery. I had a business plan, savings from my grandmother, and a dream. I found a small shop space downtown and was about to sign the lease when my parents found out. My father called me to the house for what I thought would be a reconciliation. Instead, it was an intervention. They sat me down in the living room like I was a child who had misbehaved. "We've let this fantasy go on long enough," my mother said. "It's time to grow up. Daniel has connections at several law firms. He can get you an entry-level position. You can go to law school at night." "I don't want to be a lawyer," I said. "I want to open my bakery." "With what money?" my father asked coldly. "You've already wasted grandmother's inheritance on that cooking school. Do you really think we're going to fund this ridiculous venture? I have my own savings. I have a business plan. I don't need your money." That's when my brother spoke up, his voice dripping with condescension. "Maya, let's be realistic here. You're not smart enough to run a business. You've always been the slow one in this family. Just accept it and let us help you before you embarrass yourself even more." I stood up to leave. I couldn't listen to any more, but my mother grabbed my arm. "If you walk out that door, if you go through with this bakery nonsense, You are no longer part of this family. We will not support you. We will not acknowledge you. You will be dead to us." I looked at each of them. My mother's cold eyes, my father's disappointed frown, my brother's smug smile. These were the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. These were the people who were supposed to support my dreams. "Then I guess this is goodbye," I said. I walked out and never looked back. The first 2 years were brutal. My business plan fell apart when the building I had chosen was sold to developers. I lost my deposit. I couldn't find another affordable space. I ended up working in other people's kitchens, learning everything I could while saving every penny. I lived in a tiny studio apartment with a hot plate and a dream. Some nights I ate ramen because I couldn't afford anything else. Some nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if my family was right about me. The voice in my head that sounded like my mother told me I was foolish to think I could succeed without them. But I kept going. I started selling my pastries at farmers markets on weekends. I built a following on social media. I entered every competition I could find and won most of them. Slowly, very slowly, my reputation grew. 3 years after being disowned, I finally opened my own bakery. It was small, just a tiny storefront in a neighborhood most people had never heard of. But it was mine. I named it Grace's Kitchen after my grandmother. The bakery struggled at first. There were months when I couldn't pay myself. There were times when I considered giving up and crawling back to my family, begging for forgiveness. But then I would remember the look on their faces when they threw me out, and I would find the strength to keep fighting. Things started to change in year 4. A food blogger discovered my croissants and wrote a glowing review. Then a local news station did a segment on up-and-coming bakeries in Atlanta. Suddenly, there were lines out the door. I had to hire employees. I had to expand my hours. By year 5, I had opened a second location. By year 6, I had 3 shops and a wholesale business supplying restaurants across the city. By year 7, I had just signed a deal with a major grocery chain to carry my products nationwide. My little bakery had become a multi-million-dollar business. I had cut off all contact with my family, changed my phone number, moved across the city. I wanted nothing to do with them anymore. As far as I knew, they had no idea what I had accomplished. And then, on a crisp autumn evening, I received a text message from my cousin Lisa. She was the only family member who had stayed in touch secretly, meeting me for coffee once a month against my parents' wishes. "Daniel's getting married next month. Big fancy wedding at the Botanical Gardens. Your parents are telling everyone you're living abroad, too busy with your international business to attend. They're still pretending you're part of the family. Thought you should know." I stared at the message for a long time. My parents were lying about me. They had disowned me, cut me off completely, and now they were making up stories to save face with their friends. They wanted the credit of having 2 successful children without having to actually deal with me. Something shifted inside me. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the need for closure that I had never gotten. But I decided I was going to that wedding, not because I wanted their approval anymore. I went because I wanted to look them in the eye and show them exactly what they had thrown away. The wedding was exactly as extravagant as I expected. Crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, a string quartet playing softly in the corner. My parents had spared no expense for Daniel's big day. The venue was packed with Atlanta's elite, judges, politicians, partners from major law firms, all the people my parents wanted to impress. I arrived fashionably late, wearing a simple but elegant emerald green dress that I had saved up for. When I looked in the mirror before leaving, I saw someone strong looking back at me, someone who had survived. No one recognized me at first. 7 years had changed me. I was more confident now, carried myself differently. The scared, desperate girl they had thrown out was gone. In her place stood a woman who had built an empire from nothing. I got a glass of champagne and moved through the crowd like a ghost. I heard snippets of conversation about Daniel's achievements, about my parents' successful children, about how proud they must be. I found myself near a group of older women who were friends with my mother. They were discussing the wedding decorations. "Martha has such wonderful taste," one of them said, "and both her children have done so well. Daniel is a partner now, isn't he? And what about the daughter? I heard she's doing something in Europe." My heart pounded. They were talking about me. "Oh yes," another woman chimed in. "She started some kind of food company. Martha says she's too busy traveling to come to family events, but she sends her love." The lies were so casual, so practiced. I wondered how long they had been telling this story. How many times had they pretended I was still part of their perfect family While actually wanting nothing to do with me, I moved away before I said something I would regret. I needed more information. I needed to understand exactly how deep these lies went. I wandered toward the back of the venue where a smaller room had been set aside for the bridal party. The door was slightly open, and I could hear my brother's voice inside. I stopped to listen. "Don't worry, everything's handled," Daniel was saying. "The lawyer filed the paperwork last week. Since Maya's been out of contact for so long, and there's no record of her trying to claim the property, we can proceed with the sale." My blood ran cold. "Property? What property? Are you sure she won't find out?" That was my mother's voice. How would she? She doesn't even know grandmother left her the beach house. We intercepted that letter years ago. As far as she knows, everything went to us. The house is worth almost $2 million now with the market the way it is. We'll split it 3 ways after we pay off the lawyers. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. My grandmother had left me the beach house. The house where I had learned to bake, where I had spent every summer as a child, where I had felt truly loved, and my family had stolen it from me. They had hidden the inheritance, and were now selling it behind my back. What about the letters she sent? My father's voice now. Didn't she try to contact us about the estate? "I had them redirected to my office," Daniel said smugly. "She probably thinks grandmother left her nothing. Which is fitting, really. Why should she inherit anything when she threw away everything we gave her?" I backed away from the door, my hands shaking. This wasn't just about them being embarrassed by my career choice. This was about money. This was about them systematically stealing from me while pretending to be proud parents. I pulled out my phone and started recording. I didn't know if it would be admissible in court, but I needed evidence. I needed proof of what they were doing. I texted my business partner, Nathan, who also happened to be a former corporate lawyer before he decided to invest in food businesses. He was the one who had believed in my bakery when no one else would. He had invested in my expansion and become my closest friend and advisor. "Need legal help urgently," I typed. "Family stealing inheritance. Have evidence. What do I do?" His response came within seconds. "Do not confront them yet. Where are you? Daniel's wedding. Botanical gardens. Stay calm. I'm on my way. I'm bringing Jennifer." Jennifer was his sister, a journalist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I didn't know why he was bringing her, but I trusted Nathan completely. I moved back into the main reception area, trying to steady my breathing. The ceremony was about to begin. I found a seat in the back where I could observe without being noticed. My brother stood at the altar looking every bit the successful attorney. His bride, a woman named Victoria from another wealthy Atlanta family, walked down the aisle in a designer gown that probably cost more than my first year of living expenses after being disowned. My parents sat in the front row, beaming with pride. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. My father nodded approvingly at his son. The perfect family moment, built on a foundation of lies and theft. The ceremony was beautiful. I watched it all with a strange sense of detachment. These people had been my family once. I had wanted their love and approval more than anything. Now I just felt empty. After the ceremony, during the cocktail hour, I saw my mother working the room. She was in her element, accepting congratulations, making introductions, basking in the reflected glory of her successful son. I positioned myself near her path and waited. She was mid-conversation with a distinguished-looking man when her eyes landed on me. For a moment, there was no recognition. Then her face went through a rapid series of emotions. Confusion, recognition, panic. "Maya?" she whispered, the color draining from her face. "Hello, Mother," I said calmly. "Lovely wedding." Though I noticed I wasn't invited, the man she had been talking to looked confused. "This is your daughter? I thought you said she was in Europe." My mother's smile became strained. "Yes, this is Maya. She surprised us. We didn't expect her to make it back from her travels." "I haven't been traveling," I said clearly, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I've been living in Atlanta the entire time. About 15 minutes from your house, actually. Running my business, the one you told me would fail." My mother grabbed my arm and tried to steer me away from the crowd. "We should discuss this privately." I pulled away from her grip. "Why? You've been discussing me publicly for years, telling everyone I'm successful in traveling when you actually disowned me and told me I was dead to you. Might as well keep it public, don't you think?" People were starting to stare. My father appeared, having noticed the commotion. When he saw me, his face went rigid. "Maya, this isn't appropriate. You need to leave." "Actually, I think I need to stay," I said. I have some things I need to discuss with you. Like why you've been hiding my inheritance from me. Like why you're selling grandmother's beach house and splitting the money 3 ways when she left it to me. My mother actually gasped. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? I pulled out my phone. Because I have a recording that says otherwise. A recording of Daniel explaining exactly how you intercepted the letters about the estate. How you hid the inheritance. How you're planning to sell the property and keep the money. My father's face went from red to white in seconds. You were spying on us? I was standing outside a door that was left open. You were the ones discussing fraud loud enough for anyone to hear. Daniel appeared then, his new bride on his arm. His smug expression disappeared when he saw me. What's going on? Maya, what are you doing here? Congratulations on your wedding, Daniel, I said. And congratulations on your little real estate scheme. Very clever, intercepting those letters. Very thorough, having the lawyer file paperwork claiming I abandoned my inheritance. There's just one problem. What's that? He sneered, trying to maintain his composure. I never abandoned anything. And I have evidence of everything you've done. Nathan arrived then, moving through the crowd to stand beside me. He was tall, imposing, and dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my brother's. Jennifer followed close behind, her press badge visible on her jacket. Everything okay here? Nathan asked, his voice calm but firm. Nathan, this is my family, I said. Family, this is Nathan Chen. He's my business partner and investor at Grace's Kitchen. He's also a former corporate attorney who specializes in inheritance law. And this is his sister Jennifer. She writes for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. She's particularly interested in stories about prominent Atlanta families. My mother's face went pale. This is ridiculous. You can't just show up here and make accusations. They're not accusations if they're true, Nathan said smoothly. Maya, do you have that recording? I handed him my phone. He played it loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. My brother's voice came through clearly, explaining exactly how they had hidden my inheritance, intercepted the legal documents, and planned to sell the property. The silence that followed was deafening. Guests looked at my parents with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. Someone whispered, "Did he really just admit to fraud?" My father tried to take control of the situation. This is a private family matter. This recording was taken illegally and proves nothing. Actually, Nathan said, Georgia is a one-party consent state. Maya was present during the conversation, making the recording perfectly legal. And combined with the documentation we can subpoena from the estate lawyer and the letters you intercepted, I'd say we have a very solid case for fraud and theft. Jennifer stepped forward. I'd love to get a comment from you, Judge Harrison. How do you think the state bar will react when they learn that a sitting federal judge was involved in defrauding his own daughter of her inheritance? My father looked like he was about to have a stroke. My mother was crying, real tears now, probably for the first time in years. Daniel's bride was staring at him with horror. Victoria, she whispered, is this true? Did you steal from your own sister? Daniel couldn't meet her eyes. It's not like that. She abandoned the family. She didn't deserve. I abandoned the family? I interrupted. You threw me out. You told me I was dead to you because I wanted to be a baker instead of a lawyer. You haven't spoken to me in 7 years. And now I find out that the entire time you've been stealing my inheritance and lying to everyone about it? Miss Harrison, Jennifer said, her recorder out now. Can you tell me more about your business? I'd love to include that in the story. I smiled at her. Grace's Kitchen. 3 locations in Atlanta, a wholesale business supplying over 50 restaurants, and as of last month, a nationwide distribution deal with Whole Foods. Annual revenue of $4.2 million last year. All built from nothing after my family disowned me for choosing to follow my dream, the crowd murmured. I saw people pulling out their phones, probably looking up my bakery. Someone said, "Oh my God, she owns Grace's Kitchen? I love that place." Nathan spoke directly to my parents now. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, you're going to meet with Maya's attorney. You're going to provide complete documentation of the beach house and any other assets from her grandmother's estate. You're going to sign papers transferring all rightful property to Maya, and you're going to drop whatever fraudulent sale you've initiated. And if we refuse? My father asked through clenched teeth. Then Jennifer runs the story. Every detail. The disowning. The lies you've been telling your social circle. The intercepted inheritance. All of it. I imagine that would make things quite difficult for a federal judge facing reappointment next year. My mother turned to me, desperation in her eyes. Maya, please. We're still your family. Can't we discuss this privately? We made mistakes. But mistakes? I laughed bitterly. You didn't make mistakes. You made choices. You chose to throw me away when I didn't meet your expectations. You chose to lie about me to save face. You chose to steal from me when you thought I'd never find out. Those aren't mistakes. Those are deliberate acts of cruelty. We can make this right, she pleaded. We can be a family again. I already have a family, I said, looking at Nathan. I have people who believe in me, who support me, who never asked me to be anyone other than who I am. You had your chance to be that family. You chose differently. My brother finally spoke up, his voice small. Maya, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. We shouldn't have. You're sorry because you got caught, I said. Not because you did anything wrong. There's a difference. Nathan checked his watch. We should go. The attorney is waiting to discuss next steps. He looked at my family. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow to contact Maya's legal team. After that, we proceed with formal charges and the press release. I took one last look at my parents. My mother was sobbing. My father stared at the ground. Daniel stood frozen, his bride having stepped away from him, her face full of doubt. The wedding guests watched in stunned silence. Congratulations again on the wedding, I said to Daniel. I hope your marriage lasts longer than your integrity did. Then I turned and walked out, Nathan beside me, leaving my family standing in the ruins of their perfect event. The next morning, my family's attorney contacted mine before 8 a.m. They agreed to all our terms. The beach house transfer was completed within 2 weeks. The property was worth $2.1 million. But more than the money, it was having back the place where my grandmother had taught me to bake, where I had felt truly loved for the first time. My father stepped down from his judgeship 3 months later, citing personal reasons. The legal community knew the real story. Of course, Atlanta's elite social circle was small, and gossip traveled fast. My parents quietly withdrew from their clubs and organizations, unable to face the judgment of their peers. Daniel's marriage lasted 6 months. Victoria filed for divorce after discovering other financial irregularities he had hidden from her. The law firm asked him to take a leave of absence. Last I heard, he had moved to a smaller city to start over where no one knew his name. My brother tried to contact me once, about a year after the wedding. He sent a long email apologizing for everything, asking if we could talk. I read it once, then deleted it. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. Some wounds can't be healed with words. I'm sitting in my grandmother's beach house now as I tell this story, looking out at the ocean she loved so much. Grace's kitchen has expanded to 12 locations. We just launched our first cookbook. Nathan and I are talking about taking the company national. But the success isn't what matters most. What matters is that I built this life on my own terms. I followed my dream even when everyone told me I would fail. I survived being thrown away by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. My grandmother used to tell me that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so successful, so happy, so free that the people who doubted you have to watch you shine. She was right. I don't need my family's approval anymore. I don't need their validation or their support. I have my grandmother's legacy, my own success, and a chosen family who loves me for exactly who I am. That's what winning really looks like. Not destroying your enemies, not watching them suffer, just building a life so beautiful that their opinion simply doesn't matter anymore. And every morning, when I wake up in this house and walk into my bakery and see the joy on people's faces when they taste something I created, I know that I made the right choice. I chose myself, and that made all the difference.